Well, John, it is definitely that time of year. My neighbor's kids are screaming in the hallway, and everybody's talking about the year in review. How are you, John?
I think I'm okay, Jason. How are you? Are you all right? I saw you running around in the snow.
Yeah, yeah, it
You,
snowed
you
a
feeling all
lot.
right?
I'm
Yeah.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
feel good.
All right. All right.
But there's a
Well,
lot of stories, John, that the corporate controlled mainstream news did not cover. And I think a lot of people who watch our show know that you and I rely on viewer sponsorship to keep economic influence out of the reporting. That's really my objection to this corporate owned, advertiser sponsored news is that if something comes up that's unfavorable to the advertiser, they can pull the ads, they can pull the money, they can be boycotted by left-wing or other radical groups. But with you and I, we've got this viewer sponsor model where people can watch the show on Patreon and Subscribestar, and we get into all kinds of great topics. What are we going to be covering today, John?
well, that said, I would like just a quick disclaimer that if Apple wanted to sponsor the show for a test period of 90 days, I would consider it. I'm just putting
Why
that out
Apple?
there. I'm putting why Apple? Because I use the iMac Pro 27-inch in order to generate most of the stuff you guys see. And
They would not
I've been an
sponsor
Apple.
this show. They are
Of
definitely, they
course
kicked
not. Of
Alex
course
Jones
not.
off.
Of course not. Of course not. I'd like to invite Aston Martin to sponsor the show as well. So, when you see my list of potential sponsors, you'll be, ha ha ha.
Got it.
All right. We've got a list of stuff tonight in the show that's just spectacular. What I did was I went back and I looked at our shows together and the videos that I put out over the course of the year and said, well, wait a second, how many of these stories that we've been addressing just pretty much got swept under the rug based on all the other things that were happening, or because they were part of the story and were maybe too close to the truth.
Right.
So what I prepared tonight is sort of a top 10 list of the stories that we sort of forgot to cover in the news, so to speak. Right. So there may have been an article or two, but then it's dropped. Right. And this is a pet peeve of mine, is how they don't follow up on any of these stories. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back to January, and we're going to look at what was happening in January, February, March, through the year, and sort of what were the big stories that we broke here, really broke down and drilled into, and just it wasn't covered for whatever reason. Or maybe there was an outcome, but the outcome was also swept under the rug, and you didn't hear much about that either. So that's
Right.
tonight's show. And we've got a countdown, and we can start on our YouTube, pre-show. We'll start there, and as we get closer to the number 321, we'll be in our patron and Subscribestar patron only in zone, where the stuff starts getting a little tougher for us to broadcast it on YouTube. We wouldn't be; they would pull it. So when I get to the top 3 stories, there's stories that we're not allowed to talk about that stuff here anymore. So I apologize.
Well, it's unbelievable the level of censorship that's going on. I think there's a lot more information coming out now that the Department of Justice has revealed that there is a criminal investigation into Hunter Biden's activities. Amazing how that was totally suppressed. Sam A. is joining us on YouTube, and he reminds us that Apple sponsors Black Lives Matter and AOC. I don't think they would like this show.
No, I was tongue in cheek. I really don't think Apple's going to sponsor this show, right? I think we have a better chance of getting sponsored by Cadillac. I don't think that's going to happen either. So let's forge ahead.
Yeah.
I've got a deck prepared. I want to share with you guys at least a couple of these.
I like
before
Cadillacs.
We have to go to our patron only. I like Cadillacs too.
Yeah, you got a lot of 32 valve
the funny
V8s
thing is,
now.
Yeah, guess how many Cadillacs you see in China?
Maybe 0.
Like 4. There's no Cadillacs.
You don't even
in
see them in Europe that much because it's not too focused on fuel economy, and they're big.
It's because other countries have import duties.
Uh-huh.
That's why.
Oh, well, right.
Right. So if you want to buy it, how much do you think a Cadillac costs? If you want to drive a Cadillac around Bangkok,
I think we saw a
what?
Corvette or a
What?
Camaro when,
Yeah,
when I was in
yeah,
Thailand. Then I was like,
yeah, yeah.
whoa.
It costs a fortune to
Yeah,
roll like that. I mean, you're
yeah, yeah.
basically paying twice the price of the car. So a Cadillac, you're paying $200,000. It's absurd. All right, so here's what we've got. We've got the big stories that the news forgot to report, or they were too busy to report because they were busy with the impeachment, or some other story about Kim Kardashian, and whatever is going on. They were too busy to cover these things. And so why don't we start at the top of the year? And we'll go to the first slide. So the first story, you and I were covering this at the beginning of the year in January, and you'll see when we get to the next slide, you'll see the video. But I want to talk about what the topic is, and that was we had more dead in the United States military from training accidents than from the enemy killing our soldiers. And we discussed this on the show in January, and I basically called for Mark Esper's head. I said, this guy needs to go. We need to fire him. Please, Mr. President, get rid of this guy. And he did. Mark Esper was fired 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, congratulations. Thank God. And again, my prayers are with the families that,
Well, how many
lost
dead from training accidents?
Oh, my God. I think it was in the tens of thousands. Like,
what?
Yeah,
From training?
Yeah. It's horrifying. It's hard. We went into this. Go to the next slide. You'll see the show. So this is why I did it this way. I want you guys to now you can pull up this show, right? And that week, you and I were talking about this. This was our discussion, right? And so
but
this
I don't
was the
remember
show
it being tens of thousands dead from training.
Yeah. Well, if you watch the video called Al Qaeda Over America on my channel, the full documentary, it's 2 hours long, 2 hours and 16 minutes. And in that documentary, you'll see exactly how many American service people were killed in training accidents. Right now, we were talking about these training accidents at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. We were talking about other training accidents that were getting swept under the rug. There was a lot of that. And this ties into the training in the United States at the U.S. bases. And that ties into Las Vegas.
Well, that's when we started talking about Phil Haney. And just to clarify, John, you're saying that your full documentary is available on your Patreon and Subscribestar channel. You've got previews here on the John E. Hoover YouTube,
No, the full thing is on YouTube. The 2 hour, 16-minute video is on YouTube. The whole thing.
This only says it's 39 minutes.
A year ago. No, there's 3 of them. There's part 1, part 2, and then the full documentary is 2 hours and 16. It's all up there. You just.
Okay.
It's like
I see it. Here it is. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Al Qaeda Over America, the full-length documentary, has 3,100 views. It's 2 hours and 16 minutes long. And basically, this is the Phil Haney story plus the story. And that's going to be the next thing we go to after the Mark Esper thing. So, in fact, why don't we go back to the deck and we'll bop to this next story. So the Mark Esper story, the fact that we have more dead in the military from training than from enemy kills, we talked about that. I did a video on it. We did a story about it that week. And this stuff is still relevant. This guy just got fired like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Maybe the president started tuning in.
Well, I don't know. So let's go to the next slide in my deck, and you'll see how that ties into where you just were. So the Phil Haney murder. So this story, holy mackerel. I didn't know Phil Haney, right? Now, Laura Loomer knew him. Laura Ingraham knew him. A lot of folks that we know knew him and said this guy was just a gem, just the sweetest guy, sweetheart of a guy, was passionate about what he was doing. He was one of the founding members of the Department of Homeland Security. He gets gunned down on the side of the road outside of Sacramento in Amador County, California. And at first they say it's a suicide. And everybody like Glenn Beck and everybody who knows him comes out and says, no. Louis Gohmert and says this wasn't a suicide. This guy's a religious guy. He's getting ready to get married.
Right.
That's not what happened here. He was killed. Well, it turns out that Phil was investigating a network of, at the time, what he was calling Muslim Brotherhood. We talked about that on the show, and we talked about it rather extensively. And his testimony in front of the Senate most likely led to his demise, right? We can't say that for certain, but there's a good chance that what he testified here aggravated quite a few people. And those people are connected potentially to Al Qaeda, right? And so now you see this connection. He was looking at a network in the United States that was getting Muslim Brotherhood funding. And if these guys are Al Qaeda or ISIS affiliated, and it's connected to Saudis training in America, like what we saw in Pensacola, where the FBI told us it was Al Qaeda, right? So what Phil was looking into was this network of mosques throughout the country that CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood are supporting, and his research most likely got him killed. It doesn't look like it was random, and that report just was dropped. So the sheriff came out and said, we're investigating it. We're working with the FBI. The last we heard from the sheriff in Amador County was in July. So in 2021, one of the things that we're going to do is pick up this case, and we're going to find out what happened to Phil Haney. So yeah, that's the second story, counting up from 10. So Phil Haney and what happened here, he is sort of the glue between the Las Vegas shooting, the U.S. military accidents that keep happening. Remember, we also were reporting on all these bomb scares. So what's with all the bomb scares at the U.S. bases? Who's calling those in? So there was a lot going on back then. This was in January and February. So let's go back to our deck and see what we've got for number 8.
It is remarkable, John, how there's been just basically nothing about Phil Haney for months.
Yeah, and Amador County Sheriff Martin something put something out in July, and that's the last update. And so what I tend to do is, come 2021, we're going to start to put the screws to Amador County. We want to know what's happened, and it's important. All right, the next story that just didn't get any coverage because of the coronavirus outbreak was the fact that MBS arrested the guys that I fingered. Maiteb bin Abdullah and Mohammed bin Nayef, who we gave the George Tenet Award to, right? So you'll see all kinds of pictures. You go to the next slide, you'll see pictures of, Hillary Clinton with these guys. And, these were our award-winning counterterrorism people, and MBS arrested them, right?
Counterterrorism? You're not you and me award-winning. You mean United States award-winning.
Right.
He
won the
W. Bush.
The guy in the middle between the king and MBS is Mohammed bin Nayef. He was the crown prince. He was pushed aside in favor of MBS. He was in charge of counterterrorism. And we gave him the George Tenet Award. And there's all kinds of photos of him with Hillary, him with Obama. You go to the next slide in my deck, you'll see a picture of him with Comey, right? So he's with Comey. We did all kinds of videos on this, and he arrests his father's brother, Mohammed bin Nayef, right? This is the award-winning George Tenet CIA, and my dear friend, dear friend, Brooks Rydell at the Brookings Institute, Bruce Rydell at Brookings, just gets this so wrong, it's an embarrassment. And not only does Brookings and Bruce Rydell get this wrong, so does Stratfor. They all completely screw the pooch, unless, of course, there's a backroom report. Now, I don't know what the price of the backroom report is, right? If you want the private briefing from Stratfor, if you want the private briefing from Brookings, if you want Bruce Rydell to tell you what really happened, can you pay for that? No, I don't know that you can. This story about the dissident film, they swept that under the rug so fast nobody even knows it was made.
Now,
Nobody
but
even knows
yeah,
this
I
film
hadn't
was
heard
made.
anything about that. What does that film say? That he was a journalist and a good guy? Or they're saying they fear Saudi backlash. Why does Hollywood care about Saudi backlash?
Well, because Saudi money is quite prevalent now in Hollywood. And
I
so,
never experienced that when I was in Hollywood. There was a lot
not
of
directly,
Chinese
not direct.
money. Well, that's what I
Mhm.
mean. It sounds like perhaps they're laundering money through Hollywood, but that's not a well publicized. Like nobody's running around Hollywood making movies that are sensitive to Saudi Arabia. Like got naked women in movies all over the place, drug use. They don't care about what Saudi Arabia thinks in Hollywood. That's weird.
But I, I don't know exactly how this film played out, but I had to go to the archive.org
Yeah, I
to
see
get the
that.
story. Right, because so the other page shows that when I went to Hollywood Reporter, wherever the hell I went to get this, it was already gone. Like they don't even want to discuss this. That's how similar to
The
the asteroid movie. What was that asteroid movie that they
Greenland.
Greenland?
That did come out, and actually, my Steadicam operator worked on that film, Steady Dave.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Steady Dave. All right, maybe we get Steady Dave on the show. That would be
Hmm.
awesome. All right,
Yeah,
let's see
maybe.
what we got on it. Let's see what we have on the next page. All
Oh,
right,
that's
so
where it
yeah, so
wasn't found.
yeah, they swept it away. All right. So before we go to our patron only thing, and these things start getting a little edgier and tougher to explain here, um, the next story was sort of the early coronavirus stuff. And what was happening back when we were doing this, Chelsea Manning was in jail, and the
Back in
judge
jail now,
orders
right?
was back in jail back then. The judge orders that she should be released and says this is ridiculous. But Julian Assange was still in prison. Now, they had pulled him out of that Ecuador place a year ago, April. And
Uh-huh.
so back in January, it's like, all right, so it's coming up on a year now. They've had him in custody for 9 months. What's happening? And if you scroll down on the page is the Julian Assange part. And so that's happening simultaneously. Now, this story, we talked about this, and this was that Julian Assange warned the White House that lives were at risk from a WikiLeaks dump that one of his former employees got his hands on and was releasing without redacting. And we've reported this on the show. Well, that's in the news this week now.
Yeah, Project
So
Veritas released the phone call.
right. Well, we were reporting this from now, again, this is from the Independent. So we picked this up from the Independent. They reported it in January. You and I were talking about this on the show back then. And then you go zoom out a little bit, but then the coronavirus thing kicks in. And on this particular coronavirus video that I did, this was, I think, the third video. This is where I realized what was going on. For the most part, not the whole story, but this was my epiphany of, oh, Jason's right. Something stinks. Something's wrong. Something's up, right? And so let's go to the next slide and you'll see what I mean. So this COVID awareness quiz podcast, in this video, it's the first time I introduced this notion, which is over 3,000 people have died in Wuhan. How many cities outside of Wuhan have 50 or more people died? Look at the date on that video. Look at the date.
March 19th.
March 19th. All right, the president had just declared a national emergency on March the 13th, and when he did, there were 204 people dead in the United States. All right, and so that early, we were already on to the fact that outside of Wuhan, we weren't finding a whole lot of dead folks, right? And we were on to this in March. So now go to the next slide and check out what happens here.
Where's the mouse? There we go.
There you go. Okay, then another big story that you and I were talking about months and months ago. I showed you an application where a bunch of people were on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, and we traced them throughout the country. And there was no contact tracing software. We were using, what's it, Words with Friends and
Hmm.
The Candy Crush, right? So we're using the games and the stuff that when you guys download those apps where you put whiskers on yourselves and stuff like that, and you make your photos look silly.
Yeah.
Those apps have the ability to get your location and report that back. So in exchange for the free app, you've agreed to when you said okay,
Give up your
yeah, you
info.
guys. Oh yeah, and all your friends and who you're friends with, and whatever they've put in the agreement is what you're agreeing to. So
Right.
that's kind of crazy stuff. And I don't know if you guys saw this. Facebook just this past 48 hours has been running ads against Apple because Apple is changing the iOS operating system so that it defaults to not sharing the data with Facebook.
Oh, yeah, right. They're very upset about that.
Oh my God, they're telling everybody the internet's going to get expensive now because Apple is letting you know that Facebook is
Is stealing your
trying to
valuable stuff.
access data from other places. And if you guys look, Facebook has taken out, I think, full page ads. Was it in the Wall Street Journal yesterday or the New York Times or the Mercury, San Jose Mercury News? I don't know where it was, but you guys can look at this. Facebook is losing, Zuckerberg's losing his mind that Apple is letting you know. And there you go. And now, do you remember when back at the beginning of the year, I was struggling with trying to get this OBS software to work?
Yeah.
And I upgraded the computer to Catalina. And
Right.
I said, all of a sudden, the operating system is telling me that OBS is recording all my keystrokes. Well, this is the same kind of thing. They upgraded the operating system to make it a little bit more secure and tell you more about who's doing what on your computer behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're defaulting it to off. And Facebook is losing their minds. So this is, it's contact tracing without contact tracing. We don't need no stinking tracing. We got it. You guys keep playing Candy Crush. Keep putting whiskers on your photos.
This is
And everybody
ridiculous
will.
that Facebook thinks they're speaking up for small business. Come on now.
Mhm.
Apple pushed back, accusing Facebook in November of showing a disregard for user privacy. While limiting how personalized ads can be used does impact larger companies like us, these changes will be devastating to small businesses, Facebook said. Really?
They're saying the internet. Yeah, the internet's going to get expensive because Facebook isn't going to know everything about what you're doing. So
I don't know. Facebook kicked me off for no reason. They wouldn't tell me what the reason was. They wouldn't allow an appeal. I don't like Facebook anymore.
it's a club you don't want to be a member of. Trust me. You don't want to be a member of that club. All right, so let's go back. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there already. We talked about Pegasus spyware. We talked about machines that have the ability to just hijack cell phone calls. So a whole bunch of that. We talked about this Google tracking the guy on the bike. We
Did I
talked about a
tell
guy
you how I was actually, for the first time ever, frightened by artificial intelligence the other day?
No.
Maybe I didn't tell you. We'll get into it on the
No.
sponsor exclusive segment.
Okay.
I think it's going to shock some people.
When you were in Staten Island, you mean?
Nope. It was right here, sitting at this desk.
Okay, you have to tell us. All right, tell us when we get patron only. How many more minutes do we have? Do we have to jump now?
Actually, yeah, we're pretty close. We could wrap it up for another minute or two.
I mean, we've got a bunch more stories. The top 3 are stunning. And, again, it's just remarkable that these stories just, they're not doing them justice.
Wow. This guy became a suspect just for riding a bike past a house.
Yeah. So, I'm becoming a big proponent of Luddite living. I'm starting to think the Amish and the Mennonites are laughing their butts off right now, just saying, yeah, and they're just going, you see.
They make delicious pies.
They make awesome furniture. They make awesome homes, post-beam construction. How about those buggies? I mean, you got to tip the hat to them right now. They've got to be laughing their asses off watching this and going, you guys can't live without these phones, huh? I mean, I'm just ready to take a sledgehammer to it and just say adios. See
Yeah.
ya. Let's go back to send me a card. Anybody remember Hallmark?
Yeah, what
Send
happened
a
to
card.
Hallmark? Is their stock going down?
What do you think? When's the last time you bought somebody a card and mailed them a card? There's a
I'm
lot
not a
of that
good
going on.
gauge. Well, John, we're just
See?
about out of time here. We're going to have a lot to talk about on the sponsor exclusive segment. It's going to start in just 5 minutes on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, patreon.com/I am John Cullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon/crowdsource the truth. Somebody put a stupid comment on Twitter saying, there was some criticism of the corporate news, and then a Crowdsource the Truth viewer put a very kind comment saying that these people should watch Crowdsource the Truth. And somebody who I've never heard before said, oh, this guy's just, pandering to the people who pay him like everybody else. And I was like, well, the people who pay us are the viewers, and most people are paying like $2 a month, $5 a month. So the purpose for that is that if anybody is unhappy with the information, they can just take their $5 and leave, and nobody's that upset about it. Nobody's boycotting anybody, nobody's banning anybody, nobody's pulling sponsorship that devastates the thing. This makes the viewers, gives everybody confidence that there is no financial influence in the news reporting. We've heard from Del Bigtree and countless other people that when they wanted to do mainstream news stories about potentially damaging information with respect to their sponsors, they were specifically disallowed from doing that. So we avoid that by using a direct viewer sponsorship business model, and I want to thank all the generous sponsors that make the show possible. We'll see everybody in just 3 minutes on Subscribestar and Patreon. Thanks for watching.